Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. And in this video, I like to have a free chat talking about this Siemens 2nd-generation CPUs. Basically, the left side is 200 and 300 Siemens CPU. And the right side, they are Siemens S7-1200 PLC and 1500 PLC. And also, this video is going to celebrate a milestone. And after 3 years, I set up this channel. Now, I have more than 15,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for your support. I appreciate all your support. And recently, I collected all my old stuff and I found really I have a Siemens 200 CPU and a 300 PLC. This is the old stuff. And also, I have those new CPUs here. So I would say, okay, why not? Let's create one video to show the difference between them. Also, there's another topic I would like to recommend is really a good time to migrate your old stuffs to the new generation CPU platform. Okay, let's go through them. So at the left side, this is the old style, and the color you will see this is the dark color. This is a typical Siemens PLC color before. They basically started from the 25 years ago. Siemens called the thematic platform and the 200 and the 300. You will see maybe there will be still millions of the machines. They are still keeping using this old style CPU. And roughly started from the year 2010, S7-1200 got released. And basically 1 year after, 1500 PLC also got released. Siemens migrate their system and also launch the new generation software platform TIA Portal. And you will find there are many videos and manuals to show how to migrate 200, 300 program migrate to the TIA Portal platform for 1200 PLC and 1500 PLC. Personally, I would recommend if you have any chance to migrate your existing old stuff, do it now. Okay, let's firstly go to this 200 CPU. So basically, this 200 CPU, it has one RS-485 port. The protocol behind is a PPI port. While we are downloading or do any online commissioning for this PLC, we have to use PC PPI adapter. You could use the Siemens PC PPI adapter or some aftermarket. So one end, this is the male port, and the other end, this is the USB. So I can use this adapter, communicate with this controller to do any programming change. And the programming software is named Step 7 MicroWin 4.0 software. If you are using the Windows 10, basically you have to use MicroWin 4.0 SP9, that software. By default, if you directly install the MicroWin 4.0 SP9, you probably could have a trouble. But you can find many videos in YouTube. They explain the tips and tricks how to install the MicroWin 4.0 SP9, the software. So you could still able to communicate with this controller to do the programming or do the program upload. Okay? And the 300 CPU, this one is a very classic one. CPU 315-2 DP. Take care here, DP is very classic. So if we open this cover, you will see this CPU has two RS-45 port. The left side, usually we name the MPI port, and the right side, this is the Profibus port. So the left side port, MPI port, is mainly used for two purposes. One is used to communicate with HMI, Siemens HMI or other brand HMI. And second is basically used for the programming. While we are downloading the program, so we are mainly used for this port. And the right side, this is the Profibus DP. And this cable, usually we call the Profibus DP field bus cable. So if you see here, usually Profibus field bus, this cable is a purple color. Inside this cable is using two wires, one red and one green. Because this is the RS-485, right? And from this field bus cable, it can communicate with a bunch of Profibus devices. So in the field or in the factory level, you will still see a bunch of devices, instruments, sensors, or wall banks. They are still using this purple cable, this field bus, named the Profibus DP. And inside this Profibus DP is using this cable there. So because this 315-2 DP this DP name here, it comes with this built-in Perfect Bus DP port. That's why this CPU, even this is super old style, but this was a really mainstream Siemens CPU. It's very classic. Maybe you will see still thousands or millions of machines still using this CPU. However, the drawbacks of this two old style CPU, one important thing is the communication. How can we use our laptop, especially the Windows 10 laptop? Now all the mainstream laptop, they are using the Type-C port, right? So how can we communicate with this? I would say the main style to communicate the CPU now, we are using the Ethernet cable. However, as we can see, all those CPU, they are now coming with the Ethernet port. So we have to use adapter like a USB PPI adapter or USB MPI adapter. But even sometimes you have the adapter, but your software, the Windows 10 software, does not support that adapter driver anymore. This is some cases I also suffering this. For example, if I'm using the Windows 10 to install Step 7 software, try to communicate with this CPU. Even the TI Portal still support this CPU. I can do the hardware configuration and the program in TI Portal for this CPU. But I'm not able to communicate with this CPU anymore unless I add one CP343-1, the Ethernet card. So I would able to communicate with this CPU. But by default, if I'm going to use MPI, it's really hard to communicate with this guy anymore. For example, even I have this adapter. So this adapter is named USB MPI, this adapter. This end is MPI, this end is a USB. But this adapter doesn't support Windows 10 anymore. So unless I'm using the Windows 7 32-bit system, I could able to communicate with this controller. But I'm using the Windows 10, I cannot communicate with this. Some cases, if we go back to 10 years ago, probably you will see a card named the CP5512. It is like this style. So this end need to connect to this card. And this port, we can use one RS485 cable, connect to DP or connect to the MPI port. So our laptop can use this card. This is Siemens adapter, so we can communicate with this CPU to do the program download or troubleshooting. However, this port is a PC Mac, this slot. I would say the recent 10 years laptops to this year, 2023, there's no laptop support this slot anymore. This is called PC Mac. If I remember correctly, if we go back to 15 years or 10 years at least, so the moment the typical laptop support this slot, maybe a name the Dell D620 or Dell D630. So such this Siemens official adapter, you are still not able to communicate with this old controller anymore because your system, your software system doesn't support those anymore. So here I would say if you are the Siemens, this old stuff, this old PLC end user or machine shop owner, you really need to think about this. Should have any chances upload the program, archive the existing program, and migrate them to TI Portal platform. And if any chances those controller got to fail, so you can use the migrate program and use the higher level, the new generation controller do the same job. So this migration would cover 90% or even higher 90% of the functions like before. You only take a little bit of effort to use the new controller. And in most of cases, the new generation controller, you can get a higher performance and a great feature, but a lower cost than before. Alright, now let's shift to the right side, the 1200 PLC and 1500 PLC. So in my video, maybe you saw I have been using so many times this 1200 PLC to do any kind of tasks. For example, TCP/IP communication, Modbus TCP, Ethernet IP communication, and Perfect communications. I did a lot of tests using 1200 PLC. Maybe a quick question, say, what the difference between the 1200 PLC and the 1500 PLC? I would say for the 90%, if you are not using any motion control system, basically this two system, except the memory, and I/O coverage, range coverage. Basically, these two platforms, they are quite similar. That's why for the new learner, if you are just starting learning the Siemens system, and especially you are going to do some communication test, I would highly recommend that you can start from the 1200 PLC. And also, I would recommend that you can use the real hardware to do the program, to do the I/O testing, to do the communication test, to practice. Because this 1200 PLC is really a cost-effective controller. And also you can use the PLC sim, the simulated CPU, to practice your program. And you can set up the CPU 1200 PLC or 1500 PLC as the hardware platform to test your program. But when you shift to the communication, I would recommend use the real hardware. So this is the 1200 PLC. Actually, from the performance, price, and the memory size, basically this 1200 PLC cover 200 and cover part of the 300 PLC, and their existing program can be migrated to the TI portal and use the 1200 PLC for their application. Okay, and if I take off this cover, we will see this controller better. So this is the 1215 controller, and this controller, so typically you could have a AC-DC relay or DC-DC-DC. And the reason why I have this DC-DC, because this DC output I can connect to the step motor driver, so it can do the high pulses output. So I can use this controller to control the step motor. More regular cases, maybe you can use the AC-DC relay. That means the output is a relay output, and the power supply of that controller, the CPU, is the AC power, so it's much easier to use. Especially for the new learner, you can find some used controller, and if that controller is an AC power supply, you can just plug in the AC power and do whatever you want. And this 1215 CPU, it has two Ethernet ports here. Okay, and like the typical one, 1211, 1212, and 1214, they only has one Ethernet port. So using this CPU, basically you need to use one Ethernet switch. But Ethernet switch is very easy. You just find a regular one, you can connect them. 1500 PLC and 1200 PLC, they all have this built-in Ethernet port. And the 1200 PLC also has this signal board. So in case you are using this small controller for your machine, and your machine is very high compact, so it can save room and also can save your cost. For example, in some cases, you only need to expand one or two channels, output channel or analog. So you can purchase one signal board to expand this application. Or some cases, for example, this CPU doesn't have the RS485 port, and I can use this signal board. This signal board has RS485, this ability, so we can expand one RS485 port for this CPU. And typically the left side can be expanded 3 communication modules, for example RS485 or RS232, the serial ports, and also a couple other communication boards, for example the remote communication. On right side, it can expand 8 modules. Also depends on which type of the CPU you are using. And this is the 1200 PLC. The significant advantage of this CPU is the program from the 1200 PLC can almost totally used by the 1500 PLC. That's why when you develop some new machine, you can start from the 1200 PLC. If in case you find the size of the work memory is not large enough, then you can upgrade the CPU to 1500 PLC. And in the meantime, your program can still be used for the 1500 PLC, right? So this is basically a typical way. And then let's go to the 1500 PLC. And the 1500 PLC is really the mainstream and the main battlefield player in the industry. And the typical design from the 1500 PLC, each CPU they has the display. And when we open this cover, we can see the inside. So each 1500 PLC has a memory card, switch, and this CPU comes with 2 built-in Ethernet port inside. And while we are doing the motion control, if we have to set up the perfect night IRT communication, then the Ethernet port it will care which port you are going to connect with the server drive. So you need to take care which port is which. This configuration and the physical connection need to match with your topological configuration. This just need to be very carefully. And the beauty of using this display, so we can press a button to find out the correct IP address, and also you can browse the diagnostic information from this display. And here the same design like the 300. So each CPU need a memory card. And this is the typical design like all the Siemens controller. So Siemens controller typically for 300 and 1500, they all have to use the memory card. And the beauty of the 1500 PLC, this memory card, you can use your card slot to read the memory, to read this card. And you can copy the program from this card to the TI portal using the regular card reader. And if you really have some function block or function need to be protected, you can set a password to the program function block or to your project. So don't worry about the IP protection. This is a different story compared with the 300 CPU. The 300 CPU, the card named MMC. The 300 CPU, this card is an MMC card. You are not able to use the regular card reader to read this card unless you are using the Siemens PG. Again, this card named SMC card, and the 1500 PLC has to use the memory card. So this is the slightly different between the 1200 PLC and the 1500 PLC. So basically the 1200 PLC, it does not need any card by default. When you download the program, your program will be downloaded into the CPU, same as the 200. So it doesn't need any card. But for 1500 PLC, they all has to use the card here. Okay, this need to be carefully. And in some cases, you will still see the 1200 PLC need a card. That's because this is used for different purpose. For example, you can use this card as a load memory. That means instead of downloading the program to the CPU, we can download the program to the card. So use this card like a SSD. If this CPU fail, we can unplug the card, switch to the new controller, new CPU, so your system can recover very soon. Or sometimes you can use the card as a copy-paste tool. For example, if you have 20 machines and 20 CPUs, they are playing the same role. Their program is exactly the same. So you can download the program to the card. Every time you plug the card to a new controller, new CPU, then once you power up, the program will copy from the card to the CPU. And then you can plug the card to the next CPU. Once you power up, the program from the card will copy to the CPU. And the card program will now be removed. Okay? So this is a very easy way to copy paste for different machines. Especially you are the OEM machine builder. Maybe you are building the same machine day by day, so you can use the card to copy paste to the different new controllers. And now let's do a rough comparison between the 300 and the 1500 PLC, the modules. For example, for the 300 modules, we will unplug like this way. Okay, this is 332 input channel module. As we can see here, when we open at the door side, it shows the wiring diagram is very useful, especially for the wiring technicians. And if you try to unplug this, do the offline wiring, you need to use a screwdriver to take it off, and so you can wire them. Okay, and at the behind we can see, so between the module to module, there's one black module here. Usually I call that U connector. So this U connector is used to connect the module by modules. And this is a similar design from the 1500 PLC. So let's look at the 1500 PLC. So I can unplug the module. Okay, go this way. And as we can see, this is the 32 channels module. It's a high density module. And at this area, from the cover area, it shows the diagram. Okay, and each module, it has this manually, this is small handler it helps us to unplug this connector. And all those connectors, they are spring steel. Okay, it's easy. So it's easy for the wiring. Okay. And at the behind, if I flip over, so you will see there's one module here. This module is a U connector module. There's a U connector module here. So that means when you purchase one new module from Siemens, you need to be very carefully. Don't forget purchasing this, because from module to module, it needs this U connector connect to the next module. For example, this way. If the next module need to connect with this one, so I need to use this U connector connect to here, and if I plug in and plug in the next one, so the next one can use this U connector communicate with the CPU. Okay, and it does has a little bit of drawbacks using this way, as we know, because if one module fail, physically disconnect, then all the module at the right side will lose the communication to the controller. Some design has a big backbone that a whole circuit behind. That rack is a high cost, right? But this U design, this is a lower cost. But this is a little bit drawbacks that disconnect the issue. That's why in the real case, in most of the application, we will see the main rack, the people will only use one controller, one CPU, and use the Profinet port to communicate with ET200 SP remote stations. And the ET200 SP remote stations is flexible, and you can unplug and plug in the car, even the hotspot. That is the typical style, so using the CPU only and connect with the remote stations. Okay, if your plant has a high density, has a tons of inputs output, especially for the analog inputs output. For example, my case here, this is the analog card, and this analog card can connect 8 channels analog inputs for the voltage, current, RTD, and thermocouple. So this analog card is very high density and very useful. Typically, the 1500 modules are widely used in the plant-based control system and the bunch of panel style. And again, so both 1200 PLC and 1500 PLC, they all has the built-in Ethernet port. So basically, you do not need any special adapter. You just need a regular Ethernet cable. Then you can use your laptop communicate with the CPUs. But definitely, the TI Portal software need a license. But for the education purpose, Siemens has a special education program, so the license could be very low cost. Alright, this is a very briefly review these 2 generations of the CPU. I work on the old stuff for 4 years. That was before the 2010. And basically starting from the 2010, Siemens released the 1200 PLC and also 1500 PLC after released, starting from the TI Portal version 12. The moment. Then those new generation CPUs, they are growing very fast, and every year we can see the Siemens upgrade the CPU memory size, speed, and the features. They are keep upgrading frequently. That's why, again, if there's any chances, ask the programmer upload and archive those old stuff, those old programs, and migrate to the TI Portal platform for your control system a backup plan. Alright, this is the video for today. This is a brief chat talking about this Siemens old stuff and the new controllers. And definitely I have some controllers. If there's any topics you like, so let me know. Send me a chat, send me email, or leave comments. Okay, let's talk. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumb up. If you like to watch more videos in my channel, please subscribe and hit the bell. Thank you for watching.